Hello and welcome to Gettable. We are proudly brought to you by Google. We thank Google for their ongoing support as always. A huge show coming up today. The latest on a young gun, a big trade, Q&A and much more. I'm Twomey. As you'll notice, I'm riding solo today with Riley Beveridge on assignment. So first up, let's get to our cover story, and it starts with Curtin's Crows call. Adelaide's young gun set to remain at the Crows. A couple of other things coming up today on the show as well. When will the rest of the 2023 top 10 re-sign? That's the big question. This club might have $3 million to spend. How they can use it. And remember me, the under-the-radar Stars contract. We're going out of attention at the moment. But let's get to Dan Curtin, because he's a contract decision that is coming up very soon. And we can report today that the Adelaide young gun is on the verge of a new deal, likely a 2-year extension taking him through to the end of 2028. So he's been playing good footy this year for the Crows, 14 games in his second season. Because of how many tools have been across the Adelaide Footy Club and their lineup, this year has been used up the ground, on the wing, but it's been a very promising campaign for him. In time, I think a forward role will be his end-up position, but he can go through the midfield, as we've seen. Once Taylor Walker retires, you'd expect him to take that role and fill that void. But Adelaide traded up the board to get him a couple of years ago. Remember all the discussion around where he would go as a big key part of that 2023 draft crop. Taken at number 8, the Claremont product. So good result that he's set to stay at the Crows. Now, he's going to be one of the very few at the moment top 10 picks from that year to have re-signed. So let's flip it over to the page. This is a shot from the draft night. We love this draft pick every single year, but only 2 players so far out of the top 10 picks. And there's a couple of extras in this. This is some of the first round selections from that night. Only 2 of the top 10 picks at this point have re-signed already. That's Caleb Windsor, 2028. There he is over there, the Melbourne young gun, and Ethan Reid as well, the Gold Coast tall. So he's signed through to 2028. The likes of Harley Reid, as we know, Colby McKercher, Jed Walters, Zane Dursman, Nick Watson, they haven't re-signed beyond next year as a part of this initial 3-year deal. Harley Reid, we know the talk about his contract. Believe it or not, we might actually get to some talk on Harley later in this show. But Colby McKercher, whether they sign for 1 year or 2 years, obviously the looming entrance of Tasmania is a complication there, but North Melbourne will be keen to lock him away soon. Nick Watson, talks have begun on what his next deal looks like beyond the end of 2026. You'd expect a few years to be tagged onto his deal. We know what a gun he's been in his first couple of seasons. Zane Dursman, no progress yet. Riley Sanders in a very similar boat over there for the Bulldogs, as we see with Colby McKercher. Dan Curtin, we spoke about just before, set to re-sign. And Nate Caddy in talks as well, the Essendon young gun, for another couple of seasons. Even the next 10 picks for that draft, from 11 through to 20, only 3 players from that group have re-signed. So an unintended consequence of this extra year that's a part of the AFLPA and AFL CBA at the moment. But good news for the Crows coming up there. Let's flip to our next segment. This is the last one of these coming up. It's the mid-season trade report cards. Of course, we've been doing, there's the bell. We've been doing these every week for the clubs having the bye. Let's start with the Brisbane Lions Footy Club, because a lot of discussion, of course, is going to be on what happens with Oscar Allen, their interest in Oscar Allen. They spoke to Oscar Allen at the end of last year, and that interest has remained and continued. How that shifts in terms of his injuries will be the watch, I think, because everybody associated with Oscar, the club's looking at him, West Coast, who has him, would have hoped for a better year on the field in terms of his fitness as well. But certainly the Lions have strong interest there. They're clearly worried about the ruck situation as well. Oscar McInerney, we know, has that injury battle at the moment, and where that leads to his longevity issues is another problem too. So 31 in a couple of weeks, Oscar McInerney. Clearly landing the ruck is a big focus for them. They've got interest in Sam Draper, the free agent, Josh Gablich as well, and Inside Trading has reported their interest in Riley O'Brien. Another key opportunity for them in the second half of this season is to lock in the flag heroes, Cal Archie. Brandon Starcevic is a free agent who's considering his options. Extending the 2026 crop, this has got to be right at the forefront of their mind. This has been part of their MO over the last few years as well. Get in early for their contracted players a year out. Will Ashcroft, there's been discussions already after his Norm Smith performance last year to extend him longer term. I think a 4-year deal would be most likely to get him through to free agency. But what sort of worth is he going to be when he gets to that point of his deal? So that's where the interesting point about him, he probably gets to that 1.2, 1.3 level, given the way he started his career. And Zack Bailey will be a free agent next year as well. So they'll be keen to lock him up this year. And finding points is a priority too. I mean, this is a footy club that has Dan Askable coming through. the Lions Academy prospects. So at the moment, they have picked 17, then 4 third-round picks. So they'll add to their ability to match for him. But I think clearly they know that a bid for the Hannibal Lecter, as we call him, the mastermind in the midfield there for the Allies, is going to come around and pick 2, 3 or 4. So that's got to be a focus then. Ring the bell. Next up, this is a lot harder to do when you're by yourself, but that's okay. Geelong on the mid-season report card, landing the A-grader. So the Cats are clearly in the conversation for the big dogs. They aren't mucking around. Zack, Harley Reid are there. I think they're very much planting the seed as well for Sam Walsh when he hits free agency at the end of 2026. Clearly the midfield is their angle, and after the success of Bailey Smith, and obviously combining him with Max Holmes as well, that's got to be part of their thinking. So that's right at the top of their to-do list. Finding more midfield ammo, as we spoke about. How do you bring in guys who can complement the Holmes and Mac and Bailey Smith combination? Do they look for experienced players? Do they go again for Clayton Oliver after the interest last year? Do they even look at a Jack Steele type? Is James Warple a chance as a free agent to go back to that Geelong area? So that's got to be there. Making the contract calls. We reported last week around Ollie Dempsey being on the verge of a 4-year deal. That'll happen any day now. So that'll take him through to free agency. Then Mitch Nevitt, Klahesi, and also Buse. There are another few players who are out of contract too. And then they've got the veteran decisions to make. And this happens every year at the Cattery, let's face it. Reece Stanley, Mitch Duncan, Cam Guthrie as well. Cam Guthrie hasn't played much footy over 3 years now, so you'd expect it's more likely than not to be his last year. The same with Mitch Duncan. Reece Stanley keeps on keeping on though, but there's a few decisions that they have to make. Let's ring the bell for the Bombers. All right, deciding on Sam Draper is the number one key point here. As an unrestricted free agent, they don't have a lot that they can do to keep him other than make the deal that makes him want to stay. So they've got the 4-year offer in front of him. I think that's opened the door for other clubs to come to the party with more longer term and more lucrative options there for him. The start of this year, I think he was more likely to stay. The way this has dragged on, their interest in other free agents as well and interest on the market too. I'm not sure about that as much anymore. So this is something they've got to make a call on. They have to make some tough list calls. 17 players are out of contract at the Bombers. Let's go through a few of the names. Nick Bryan, Alwyn Davey, Sam Draper, as just spoke about, Ben Hobbs, Jaden Laverty, Jackson Pryor, Will Setterfield, Dylan Shield, John Menzies, Todd Goldstein, Viggo Vicentini. There's a few more as well. Saad El Hawali, Josh Gablich reported last week in talks for a contract there. And of course, some of their mid-season pickups as well are out of contract. So there's going to be a squeeze on at the Bombers. They have to use the next 9 weeks to work out who should be a part of the squeeze or who's safe from the squeeze. Chasing talent that's under 25. Harley Reid. We know their interest in Harley. Miles Bergman as well, we revealed a few weeks ago they've got interest in him. Zach Butters, they'll be in that market too. We'll get a little bit more on Zach Butters later in the show. Dominate the draft. So this is the option. You either chase the talent or you go to the draft. And there's a lot of successful stories that have been built out of the draft and going well to the draft over a number of years. This is what they've done. I think they drafted really well last year. Nate Caddy, Archie Roberts the year before that, and some other players as well in recent seasons. So if you don't go for these guys and don't land any, going to the draft is a pretty safe option, and they've got a great hand to do that. Pick 5, pick 6, 22 and 24. And also their academy boys, Adam Swade and Hussein Al-Ashka coming after that. And finding the best fits too. You need to work out what fits for you guys. And what fits as a footy club, where to work out what the midfielders do. Elijah Sardis, is there a role from him in the midfield that already has a stacked group of players there? And if not, move out and try and get a pick in there for him. GWS, let's ring the bell for the final mid-season trade report card. Sign up, Finn. This was the big to-do list at the start of the year. Got the big tick. That's a great one for the Giants. He got signed up, as did Darcy Jones. So they were a couple of big priorities for them. Adding to their midfield, for me, this is the number one item really left to do now. And we see the reliance on Tom Green. He was awesome on the weekend, 16 clearances. But how much reliance is on him to make things happen for their midfield group these days? So how do you find the midfielders there? Are they a club that should look at Clayton Oliver? Cap space might be a challenge, but is that something that they should look at? Get clarity on this quartet. Lekalia, Wade Dirksen, Xavier O'Halloran and Jacob Ware, all out of contract. Alia's got the interest from St Kilda and other clubs. Dirksen has Melbourne interested as well after last year's failed trade plan. and Xavier O'Halloran, well, he's out of contract. The Bulldogs may have moved on in terms of their midfield mix now. Jacob Ware's got interest too as a free agent, so we keep a watch on him. And going early on the 26 crop, this has got to be a priority for the Giants too. And Cameron, what's this guy going to be worth? Number 1 pick. He's just coming as a key forward now, get past that 50 games part. So he's going to get big offers to come back to Victoria. I think Geelong would be all over him, can be coming out of that region. So Max Grzuski as well has interest this year, but I don't think they'd move on him because he can't break into that team consistently. But he's one that I know clubs will come for again next year as well. Jack Buckley will be a free agent. And then there's also James Leake, who we spoke about earlier, hasn't re-signed from that 2023 draft, but has the Tassie link coming. So that is the mid-season trade report cards as we take a little bit of a breath because the Under-18 Championships continue this weekend on Sunday. I'm looking forward to these 2 games at Marvel Stadium. Here's the first one. Vic Country v South Australia at Marvel Stadium, 11 o'clock Victorian time. And then after that, we see the Allies and Western Australia at Marvel Stadium as well. So South Australia, incredibly, can lock up the title. They can win this whole championship on Sunday and will be red-hot favourite to do that after strong wins over WA, Vic Metro and the Allies already. Watch on afl.com.au and the AFL Live app, live and exclusively there. Just on the championships as well, I want to take a couple of years view because under 16s level, we've seen a guy emerge who I think could well be Tasmania's first ever draft pick. Let's have a look at Axel Walsh, 201 centimetre prospect, key forward, a ruckman. He made his debut for East Perth's Colts side recently, kicked 2 goals. Here it is. He's a really athletic, exciting prospect out of WA. He can move around the ground, play ruck and key forward. He is dominating the under-16 championships at the moment for WA. Over the weekend, 23 disposals, 6 tackles, 29 hit-outs, 5 contested marks against SA. So he might well be the Devils' first ever draft pick in 2027, should everything go to plan from their perspective. So keep an eye out on Axel Walsh. He's the younger brother of Xavier Walsh at Port Adelaide. And before we get to Askable, which is coming up, and we thank everyone for sending their questions through, an interesting couple of weeks from a recruiting front because 5 clubs headed to Dallas to watch 10 American athletes from soccer, volleyball, basketball backgrounds test and trial for AFL rookie positions last week. Gold Coast, Collingwood, St Kilda, Hawthorn and Geelong were there. The plans from here we see some of the vision. They're getting their footies. You get a Sharon. You get a Sharon. You get a Sharon. Bit of Oprah about it. And they're watching the grand final here. I think that's the 2023 grand final. A little bit of skill work as well in front of clubs here at Dallas. They got their hands on the footies. Bit of kicking technique work there. The plans from here will see the AFL look to bring out 2 or 3 of the athletes later this year in August or September to trial them at AFL clubs further before any AFL clubs go forward with Category B rookie decisions. Pierce Davis was a standout, 203 centimetres. He ran about 2.9 seconds in the 20-metre sprint. He's grown up in Sacramento, so comes from a back basketball background. Hayden Curtis, 211 centimetre, former soccer and basketball player. Read the ball really well in the air, I'm told. And Josh Van Gorp, a footballer and basketballer from Iowa, he did well in the 2-kilometre time trial. So we watch to see if any clubs take a punt on those guys. All right, I'm going to take a breath, and then we're going to get to Askable. All right, that's that part of the show done. Now let's get to one of our favourite parts. It's one of our favourite segments. It's Askable. Thanks to everyone for sending through their questions. You can find us on Instagram at Gettable. Hit us up there with all your latest questions. All right, the first one comes from Sean. What is the flow-on effect of Matt Rowell staying? So it's a big decision, the one that everyone was expecting for some time, but he made it official to the Suns last week. Now the negotiations are underway. I think in the end, Collingwood was going hardest and the Western Bulldogs were right in it too. As we reported back in January, he got on very well with Luke Beveridge in their meetings. So he'll do 2 more years, then assess as a free agent. He thought long and hard about returning home to Collingwood and was a big fish in the sights of the Pies for a long time, but he's going to stay. The flow-on effect, well, people will know more about the midfield market now. So there's a lot of vying for these senior positions, the Sardis, Clark, Erasmus, Sheldrick, Huswaite types. But then really there's the clubs looking at the established players and trying to pull out the Warple types too. So I think it crystallises that Warple now has a big call coming for him and we'll have some suitors. Ryan, is Freo looking at trading out any players this year or anyone in as well? So the number 1 target coming into this year was Cozzy Pickett. We know that isn't happening now. They've been keen on Chad Warner in recent years as well, and Liam Baker too. Obviously, he went to West Coast. So the watch clearly is on for me in the ruck space. Luke Jackson played the best game ever by a Dockers player last week, according to the AFL player ratings. So I just don't see any way that you could let him go, even if he still harbours a slight interest in it. I think he's a pretty good chance now to be staying. The interest now will be on what Sean Darcy does, and he has a deal until 2030. Potentially he'd be the one to go out. Brandon Starcevic has had interest previously, but I don't have them pursuing the Lions free agent this year. Tom, where do Louis Kellaway and Cal Smith fit in the draft pool? So Tom's obviously a Richmond supporter because these are two players with ties to the Tigers. Louis Kellaway plays pretty consistently. He's a father-son prospect for Richmond, been a consistent member for South Australia's side, averaged 25 touches for Sturt as well. Probably a later end option, I think, as a father-son. The son of former Tiger Duncan. And Cal Smith is the grandson of Kevin Bartlett. So he had 14 touches and a goal against WA in this championship game earlier this year. He's been playing more midfield recently with Dandenong, but I think his best spot is as a half-back generally and be able to use the footy out of that defensive zone. All right, next question from Natalie. Who is an out-of-contract player going under the radar? Well, this is the guy that I think goes under the radar more than anyone in terms of their contract at the moment, and it's Callum Archie. So considering this guy is a flag hero from last year, was awesome in the run to the grand final and on grand final day for the Lions. He's been in the best form of his career over the past 2 seasons and has had talks ongoing for months. This is one that definitely has gone under the radar. His preference has been to stay. And I still have that as the most likely outcome. But clubs have thought through the year that he's been gettable at the right level. So this is probably his last decent big deal and big contract at 28 years old. So that's still a watch this space until he signs. Cal Archie, now not under the radar. Lockie, will Darcy Cameron stay at Collingwood? Well, I think that would be the preference. But he is underpaid for how high value he is. And best on ground last week for Collingwood against St Kilda, according to the coaches' votes. He's not close to an extension at all. He's out of contract next year. Collingwood is getting pretty tight with its cap now. Braden Maynard's new deal is back-ended, so that'll mean you push back money and sort it through there. That's my understanding of how that's working. So then there's all these veterans who want to play on, and that's a change of plan. So West Coast, we know Carlton's been linked as well to Darcy Cameron. What the future holds there is a little bit unclear at the moment, but I don't think there's any contract extension on the horizon anytime soon. All right, Zack wants to know, who are North targeting after missing out on Maynard and Millerer? So I think they should dangle their future first rounder for the right player. Riley spoke about this a couple of weeks ago as well as being something they should do to see if they can open up their interest in somebody. Why don't they join into the Miles Bergman chase and offer up their future first rounder? I mean, he's right in their age bracket. I think he'd add to what they've got. Clearly, they're looking at that half back line, though, with Maynard and Millerer previously. Brandon Starcevic would be a perfect fit for them too, given they're clearly looking at that type of defensive half-back. Starcevic is interested in midfield time as well. He probably won't get too much of that at North Melbourne, but I think most of the time at North now is coming from within, and re-signing Colby McKercher will be item number 1, 2 and 3 on Brady Rawlings' to-do list. Dylan wants to know, what's your view on the Saints Academy submission? So we reported this last week on afl.com.au. There it is. Saints call for an end to New South Wales and Queensland academies as part of a massive draft haul. So they're going strong, I believe, in this recommendation to abolish the North Academy zones and change them to NGA zones. They're going strong knowing that's not going to happen this year. I think they're trying to rattle the cage and they feel that the pendulum has swung too far in terms of the equality of the draft. I do think the draft has issues. We are in a totally compromised draft pool in a weak draft, and I worry about the level of talent to sustain another club as well coming in when that comes through. But my view has not been to run down the northern clubs, but to get the WA, the SA, the Victorian pathways and talent pools to be rising and to find a way to do that. So I think that getting them up to a level that the Northern Academy clubs have shown is an important part of this. So the AFL has been looking at change for this year, but I think it'll stay as it is. And I think the new point system should be tested to see how it goes. The idea that pick 5 this year will become pick 13 based on academies is not right. So it's not going to push back that far. TNT footy. Looking forward to ACDC coming to Melbourne soon, by the way, TNT. Should Carlton shop their players for a rebuild or change their coach again? So that is the equation. should the change surround Michael Voss or should it include him? And the next 9 weeks is going to decipher that and decide that, I think. Assistant coaching panel is expected to be refreshed either way. Most of them joined ahead of Voss's first year in 2022. So then there's the Curnow, Mackay, Walsh decisions. I think Mackay is a conversation that will be far more open than the other two. Seth wants to know, what's the latest on Zack Butters' contract? Well, the man himself spoke to media this week. Let's have a listen to him.
Yeah, there is a lot of noise about it, and I feel like, that's always going to be the case, and it's footy, it is what it is, and yeah, to be honest, I haven't really thought about it too much lately. I think other people think about it more than I probably do. But yeah, right at the moment, I think like the season's very much alive for us. I know we have to get a lot of things right and do a lot of good things, but while it's alive, and that excites me. I don't think I'm going to rush. I think it's a big decision, but I'm committed and I'm in, so I feel like until that decision needs to be made, then I'll make it then.
I've got a soft spot for Zack Butters. He always speaks well and presents well to the media, and he did again yesterday. He's got a deal in front of him that would be the biggest in AFL history if he signed it. But he isn't signing it at the moment, and that pull back to Victoria is and has been strong from him throughout his whole career. Some clubs think he still will look to see if there's any trade option this year. My stance all year has been that I don't think there's any way Port can or should let him go, but it hasn't been that he wouldn't look at some point. So whether he does look or not, I still don't think the resolution or conclusion changes, because I don't think Port Adelaide should or could do that. If Naz decides to go to Port, then they would want him to be with Butters as well for at least a year in terms of Wanganeen Miller's decision at St Kilda. So that's where I think it sits, but that's not going to stop Geelong and Western Bulldogs in particular. I think they are the two strong, hot favourites in the chase for Butters. All right, Tate wants to know, who would be your top 10 draftees mid-championships? We've had a few questions about when the Phantom Form Guide is coming out for the first time. It's always the week after the carnival finishes. Been that way since 2013 and it's not changing now. So inside that top 10 at the moment, I'd have Cooper Duff-Tytler. This is in no order, by the way. Cooper Duff-Tytler, Willem Dersma. I think Dyson Sharp is in there. Zeke Hewland, Dylan Patterson from Gold Coast Academy. Dan Annabelle would be in there as well from the Brisbane Academy. And Josh Lindsay as well from the Geelong Falcons. Ollie Greaves, I think, would be pretty close to being in there. Sam Grill, the Sizzler, I think he'd be in there potentially. Archie Ludowick as well, depending on how he finishes the carnival. Aidan Schubert's been a real riser as well. So there's a few of the names, but I have a couple of weeks to work that out before we put that one out in mid-July. Jet, who is Essendon targeting? So they were in the Matt Rao chase, clearly. They met with him last year. Fits the age profile. They're very much in the chase for Miles Bergman. I think he'd be a super fit for them if he decides to go. Clearly, Port Adelaide are desperate to keep him. They've got an 8 or 9 year deal there for him at very good money. I think if he left, he'd probably be leaving money on the table given how strong their interest in keeping him has been. Clearly, Essendon is still dangling its picks for Harley Reid, and picks 5 and 6 would be a pretty good starting point for him if he did want to move. I still have Geelong Hawthorn in that, as well as St Kilda, who I believe would have the most significant financial offer for Reid, but that decision will come later this year from him, I'd imagine, whether he wants to pursue anything or re-sign. I still think if he wants to cut away the noise, then re-signing at West Coast for a couple of years would be a good role and a good decision for him. Essendon will also be in the Butters discussion, as we spoke about, and they do have interest in Brandon Starcevich, which we reported earlier this year. A lot depends on Sam Draper's call as well, because they do have these selections as well. They've got such a good draft hand. Pick 5, pick 6, pick 22, which is tied to St Kilda, pick 24. And then what happens with Sam Draper if he does go? Is it a first round compensation pick, which would have to be a $900,000 level to trigger that, or an end of first round compensation pick, which is a big gap in terms of where those picks would land. So either way, they're in a strong position. Who will be the next player to re-sign at Hawthorn? Big week at the Hawks. Massimo D'Ambrosio, 3 years. Josh Ward, 4 years. Noah Mraz, 2 more years. I think now it's about Lloyd Meek, that 3 to 4 years contract that'll be coming for him. I expect to be one of the next ones. Sam Butler also out of contract, so I'd expect that with him returning to the team recently, that they expect to push him out an extra year or two as well. Tanti, will North package up their second rounders to move up the board? Currently, North's holding pick 20 and 21, so they did get back that second round pick from Richmond to move that draft night deal last year. I don't think there'll be much of an appetite for clubs to package their picks up and get, unless you're really early at the top of the draft. I think it's going to be a struggle to see clubs do that in this year's pool, given the talent in it. I also wonder if clubs really would be that interested in sliding back this far for an extra selection. given what we've seen so far. So I don't know if they'll be able to move from there, but 2 reasonable players you'll be able to get at that point in the draft. Hayden, what clubs chasing Miles Bergman can get the deals done? So let's have a look at what they can actually offer some of these clubs who are into him. Essendon has picked 5 and 6, so they're clearly got a pretty good hand there. St Kilda has picked 4, and also Nazai Wanganeen-Miller as chip, I guess you'd call it, if he decides to go home and go to Port Adelaide. The Western Bulldogs have their first rounder for this year and the next 2, so that's going to be a pick this year in the teens, but that's certainly, at least they've got their full suite there. Geelong is in it. Pick 16 won't get it done, I wouldn't have thought. Well, it won't get it done. Carlton would be about turning the TDK pick into Bergman in the chance or the expectation that he went to St Kilda. That would be pick 10. And Melbourne also, it doesn't have its first rounder this year, but that's obviously with the Bombers at the moment, but it can dip into its future hands. So they're the clubs I think that would be right in that mix for Bergman if he does come back. John wants to know where is Sam Draper at with his decision. While he's still weighing this up, I think this is very much live that the Adelaide and Brisbane interest is right in his head. So we can't wait for a decision soon on that one. But the longer this drags out, the more likely it is that he's thinking about that move. Tilly, surely West Coast go after someone with their salary cap space. Well, I think with Jeremy McGovern moving out next year and his money, like all of it, mainly 90% of it going under the concussion relief, there's a bit of money. If Oscar Allen goes, this club could have about $3 million to spend. It's just about where and how and who they spend it on. So that's the big part of them. And also, do you use the money or protect your draft hand? That's got to be a decision they make. And finally, favourite question of the day. What did you make of the Vikings debut? 9 touches, 6 marks, 2 tackles, and lots of Viking hats. There's his old man. Good to see him there. There's his mum and his sister as well with the Viking hat. I like that. And there's all his Warrigal teammates. They were there for a night to watch their man play. So great to see the Viking hats there. We're looking forward to having Riley back next week. Thanks for joining us.